Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the technical glitch as we get started. Welcome. My name is Michael Accardi, and I'm honored to be with you all today at our first of 3 in the advocacy series. And I'll ask to oops, does everyone hear me now? I think that's right. All right, sorry about that. Welcome to today's presentation. It's the first of 3 webinars in the advocacy series. This one's titled The Nuts and Bolts of Advocacy, Advocating for Policies in Support of Infants, Children, and Families. We're excited to have you all here. Welcome, and thank you for bearing with us as we get through some of our technical glitches. It's Tuesday, but it feels like a Monday. So welcome, and I'll ask to go forward to the next slide. Today's presentation has a live Spanish translation option, as do all of our webinars. You can select in your webinar controls interpretation, and you can then select the language you would like to hear. And to hear the interpreted language, you can click mute original audio. We also have closed captioning available today. To view the closed captioning as a live transcript, you can go into your Zoom controls, click live transcript, then you click show subtitle. You can adjust the size of them by clicking the settings. And if enabled, you can also click view full transcript to view the transcript in the side pane of the meeting. To chat with us in terms of technical issues or comments with your peers in the webinar today, please use the chat feature. And for technical assistance, you may contact us via the chat, or you may email my colleague Nelson Artavia at nelson.artavia@childrens.harvard.edu, and he will be able to respond. Just in terms of Zoom etiquette, please mute yourself. It's great to display your name, so thank you all. As we get going here, please feel free to put in the chat who you are and where you're from. We love to know and get a sense, colleague to colleague, of where everyone's from. I'm excited to say that we had people sign up for this from New Zealand, from Australia, from all over Europe, from all over the United States. So we're very excited today. There are over 1,300 people registered for today's webinar. And today's webinar has a feedback survey and a certificate of attendance. To complete, to receive the certificate of attendance, you must complete the feedback survey. It will pop up in a browser once the webinar ends, and alternatively, you will receive it in an email tomorrow with a recording of today's session. So if you don't get a chance and you're running to another meeting, you can always submit the survey tomorrow, but we appreciate your feedback. We do genuinely use them to improve our webinars, to look at the comments, to see how people feel about their participation. We also are doing something different for this. We have, unlike our other webinars, for this one, we've created a digital badge for use on social media. So we're very excited to be able to offer this. You can see the little picture there on the slide. It says, "I advocate for children and families." We have it available in Spanish and English. And it's also available for you via download once you complete the survey and in the email tomorrow that you will receive after the webinar. You can use it on your little profile picture on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And it's just a neat way to be able to communicate, in addition to the certificate of attendance, that you were here, that you are a proud advocate for children and families. And we're excited to be able to offer this today. We also have created an advocacy reference guide that you will receive after this webinar and after each of the webinars that you may attend in the 3-part series. It is available in English and Spanish, and it's full of helpful points and tips that are designed to make it easier for you to reach out in whatever communication format you feel most comfortable, whether that's phone, email, or meeting in person with elected officials. It's excited that we're kind of going back to an in-person format for many things. You can see that I'm here in my office today, which is different. And like I said, it will be available for download once you complete the survey, and it will also be available in the email tomorrow via a link. So today's session is made possible and facilitated by our colleague, Catriona McDonald. She is the founder and president of Linchpin Strategies. Linchpin Strategies is one of the top woman-owned federal lobbying firms, and she is a strong and lifelong advocate for children and families. She can tell you many stories about being on Capitol Hill and in other venues of policymaking and halls of power, where she has been advocating with children and families and teaching advocacy skills. So we're very excited to have her with us today. And I will stop here and turn it over to Kat. Thank you all, and welcome.
Michael, thank you. And thank you, Braselton Touchpoint Center, for making this possible. It's exciting to see so many folks from across the country and across multiple countries joining us today. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. We're delighted that you are choosing to be an advocate for children and families, and delighted to have hopefully 3 opportunities to help you build your advocacy skills. Today, we're going to talk about nuts and bolts of advocacy. In 2 weeks, we'll have another session talking in a deep dive about stories and using stories to connect and motivate elected officials. And then our 3rd session in November, we will talk about gathering people together in your community to create strength in numbers. But, when I was working on Capitol Hill, and I spent 6 years working in Washington, D.C., in this building that is here on the screen, when constituents would come from all over the country, and I would be giving presentations to them about how Washington, D.C. works. The number one question that was always asked was, does advocacy actually make a difference? Yeah, we learned in elementary school, democracy, government of and by and for the people, but often government feels very far away. Even if you're not thinking about the national government, even if you're thinking about your local government, it can feel disconnected, it can feel separate. And I think all of us sometimes have questions about, does this really matter? Many of you are experienced advocates, and presumably you all think that advocacy matters and makes a difference, or you wouldn't be spending your time here today. But I always think it's good to remind ourselves of really important times when people organizing and speaking out for children have made a difference. And so one of my favorite pictures is on the next slide, and an example of where advocacy absolutely made a difference. So in 2008, it was very clear that we were heading into not just a national recession in the United States, but a global recession. And a big package of relief funds was put together that was intended to be one-time budget boosts. And that 2008 package included $1 million a year for 2 years for Head Start, and $1 million a year for 2 years for childcare. That relief for parents and families was extremely important. But it was always intended to be one-time money, and it was always intended to go away in 2010. Well, we knew that even though the recession was improving by 2010, those children and those families still needed that help. And advocates in Washington, D.C. began talking to members of Congress about how important it was to hold on to those child care and Head Start funds and to make them part of the ongoing budget. Even though they'd been intended as one-time money, it was not a one-time need, and we needed to build those resources into the base budget. Well, I'm really sorry to tell you that we were not able to save the $1 billion a year that was put into childcare, but we were really pleased to be able to hang on to the $1 billion a year that was invested in Head Start. And you know what made the difference? it wasn't advocates in Washington, D.C., because we were talking about why childcare and Head Start were both important. It was the advocacy that was happening on the ground with moms like the ones in this picture. The National Head Start Association helped to organize stroller brigades of moms who packed up their kids and marched with strollers from the Head Start centers to the offices of their elected officials, in particular, their local senators' offices and the local offices for their representatives. And those moms asked for meetings with the staff. Typically, it was staff in the office when they got there and not a member of Congress. They signed the guest books. They talked about what their lives were like and why they really needed this continuing funding that could support thousands of additional kids in Head Start. Childcare has the sort of same facts. The families and young children need childcare, but it wasn't as organized. The childcare system is more decentralized. It didn't have an organizing organization like Head Start, and it didn't have the brand that Head Start has, but it didn't have moms like these ones out literally marching in the streets with their strollers. The press picked up on it. There were photographs in the newspaper. There were stories on the evening news about the stroller brigades. And what do you know? At the end of 2010, when the federal budget was put together, that $1 million a year for Head Start was maintained. And the only thing that was different between childcare, which lost the money, and Head Start, which kept it, was the advocates, and in particular, the moms who turned out to support those funds. So if we could go to the next slide, some of the basics in advocacy, you want to make sure that you are answering the questions and giving elected officials the information that they need to make decisions. So how do elected officials make decisions? And I really think that this is true pretty much for any elected official at any level of government and probably pretty much anywhere in the world. My primary experience is working on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., but I did spend the better part of a year working in Parliament in London for a member of Parliament as well. This is a checklist that we would run through in one of the congressional offices that I worked in as we were putting together our recommendations for the Congresswoman on issues we thought she should engage in or how she should vote. So elected officials want to know, what is the impact broadly of this issue on the people that I represent? And then specifically, if I'm a senator, I care about the whole state. If I am a representative, I care about my congressional district. If I'm a city council person or a county supervisor, I care about those folks. But in particular, I want to know, how does this issue impact the people who support me? Because my job is to take care of all of the people in my district, but I'm also particularly interested in understanding the impact on my supporters. And support can mean a lot of different things. It can mean, who are the voters who turn out to vote? It could be the volunteers. No political campaign has enough money to pay for all the work that needs to be done, whether it's organizing events, knocking on doors, hanging door cards with information about the candidate. No campaign can afford to pay the workers that they need in order to win. So they care about their volunteers. Organizations make a big difference, whether it's an organization like the Head Start Association that can organize stroller brigades. It might be an organization that can host somebody to come and talk. Maybe it's a church or a synagogue that would host a political candidate as a speaker. Maybe it's a parent-teacher association at the school. How does this impact organizations that can help to motivate people to vote and to turn out voters, or to create a forum for the political, the elected official or the candidate to present their feelings and views? And then donors. Another question that elected officials ask is, do people know and care about this issue? Now, sometimes when it's a best kept secret problem, people want to solve that problem before it becomes any bigger. But in general, members of Congress or other elected officials, it matters to them if this is a known problem, if this is a problem that's affecting a lot of people and a lot of people care about it. Another question that we always had to answer was, does the elected official have a track record on this? Have they voted on this issue in the past? Have they made statements during campaigns? Have they made campaign promises that relate to this issue? And the elected official wants to know, what is my track record here? And if I vote one way or the other way, is this a new approach that I'm taking, or is this consistent with how I have the stand that I've taken on this issue in the past? And then always, every elected official has a circle of people whose opinions they respect. It's typically people that they know, maybe they've known for a while, leaders in the community. And they don't have to be people who lead big organizations. They don't have to be people who turn out votes or volunteers. They don't have to be people who give money, but maybe it's someone, a doctor in the community, that an elected official always asks for an opinion about something that's related to medicine. Maybe it's in healthcare. Maybe it's a teacher and someone that the elected official respects to give an unvarnished opinion on what's going on in education. For any given issue, our boss had a list of people that she cared about, who she respected, and she wanted to know, what did they think about this? So if we can go to the next slide. If the number one question that I was asked as a staff person was, does advocacy matter? The number two question was often, well, what about campaign contributors? I don't have enough money to make a contribution to an elected official. And so are they going to care about my opinion? And my answer, based on my observations, was always and unequivocally yes. So in keeping with the theme, this is a picture of Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole, who for about the last 10 years has been the highest ranking Republican on the committee that funds Head Start, childcare, education, and health issues. Sometimes in the last 10 years, he's been the chairman when Republicans are in control of the United States House of Representatives. And sometimes he's been the Republican ranking member when Democrats have the majority in the House of Representatives. This picture is of Mr. Cole meeting with 3 Head Start staff from Oklahoma. Some of them started as Head Start moms and worked their way up to be Head Start leaders. And we were visiting Mr. Cole to talk with him at the time that we were trying to hang on to the Head Start funding that I talked about earlier. So when somebody gives a campaign contribution, does it make a difference? Well, yes, the answer is, of course, yes, because members of any elected official needs funding in order to be able to communicate with constituents and get the word out about the things they've done for their constituents and, frankly, run for re-election. But campaign contributions, in most cases, don't buy what many people believe they buy. What they really buy is time in front of the elected official, for the elected official to listen to the donor make a case for the things that that donor cares about. And really what those donors are buying is access. So if you don't have money to contribute, how can you get access? How can you get in front of a member, an elected official, a member of Congress, or their staff to make your case? Well, constituency matters. And when you are somebody who votes, who works on an issue in your community, who works with other people in the community as a leader on that issue, you can reach out and request a meeting, and your information absolutely can make a difference when you are in contact with those elected officials and providing the information they need to answer those questions. So on the next slide, we've got a repeat. We want to answer these questions. How do elected officials make decisions? These are the questions we want to answer. The impact on people who are represented, the impact on my supporters. Is this a visible issue? Is this something people care about? Is this something people are talking about? Are those stroller brigades on the news? Does the member have a track record? And what do people I respect say about this? So there are some tricks to answering those questions. If we can go to the next slide, we don't just want to answer the questions. We want to engage and hook elected officials to take up the cause and to take our side. So answering those questions that I just outlined, it takes a little research. It takes facts and it takes figures. And those are the two things that people tend to focus on the most. What are the statistics? How many children in our community are hungry? How many families in our community are homeless? What are the facts? What's the impact? What are the numbers? And there is no question that those facts and figures and the statistics are important. But they aren't enough by themselves to motivate people to action. In my experience, the two additional ingredients that are really needed in order to persuade an elected official to become a champion are solutions to the problem, particularly examples of where something has worked somewhere else, because I think this is a normal thing for all of us. If you present me with a problem that feels so overwhelming and so big and so insolvable, we tend to just throw up our hands and move on to something that we feel we can actually make a difference on. So solutions are important, and stories. Figuring out a way to make an emotional connection with the listener is critical to encouraging them to become champions. So, in other words, on the next slide, we can provide a lot of information to an elected official, but what motivates them to become champions for our cause? We want to identify the problem and the number of people that it impacts and understand the problems that it creates. We do that through facts and figures, but motivating them to go beyond just listening to the problem to championing the cause requires a suggested solution, a solution that is doable and can actually happen, and an emotional connection. And those connections are made through stories. We're not going to talk a lot about stories today because we're going to spend a whole webinar in a couple of weeks talking about the kinds of stories that you can tell that help make the connection, that motivate folks. But before you can present your problem, your facts and figures, your solution and your connection, you have to find the right person to talk to. So on the next slide, let's talk for a minute about how to do that. So first of all, who is in charge of the issue? It's important to find the right level of official who's in charge of the issue, because if you talk to somebody who's not responsible for making those decisions, there's very little that they can do. So let's say, for example, that the thing that you are motivated to advocate around is housing. There is a terrible shortage of housing in your community, and too many families do not have an affordable, safe place to live. So who's in charge of this? Well, there are a couple of different pieces. If you are primarily focused on funding to build safe, affordable housing, then a significant amount of that money comes from the federal government. And in particular, if you are looking at housing vouchers for low-income families, almost all of that money comes from the federal government. And so you might need to be talking to your United States senators and to your representative. On the other hand, can put a lot of money into the federal budget for housing, and your state will only get a small portion of it. And so states also frequently put money into the housing budget for low-income housing. And because the state is the recipient of federal funds, the state develops policies around how the federal funds can be spent. So if your focus is not on the total amount of money, but on the policies, you might need to be talking to your state legislators. And it might be that they have the ability to write or amend policy at the state level. Or it could be that you've identified its local zoning issues that are preventing affordable housing from being built in the community that you live in. And in that case, it might be your city council or your county supervisors. Those local policies might be the biggest barrier, and you need to be reaching out to your local elected officials. Or maybe all three of them have a role, and you need to be lobbying, advocating at more than one level. So how do you figure out who is the right person to talk to, both what level of government to talk to, and then if I have figured out, okay, I need to talk to my state legislators, how do you figure out who your state legislator is? Some folks on this webinar have been doing advocacy for some time, and you might already be connected to those offices. But other folks who are coming to this for the first time, maybe you know who your local school board official is, but you have no idea who your United States senator is. Or maybe you get mailings periodically from your representative who goes to Washington, D.C., but you have no idea who it is on the city council who represents the part of town that you live in. So how do you find them? Well, the first thing to remember is you don't have to do this all yourself. And there are likely to be organizations in your community that are organized around these issues, people who care about this stuff, and they have done the research and they have figured out if it's zoning policy that is the biggest barrier. We need to talk to our local officials, and here's the list of who they are. If you don't know organizations in your community and you're not sure how to find the people to talk to, the internet is absolutely your friend and is an amazing resource. So I have done most of my work at the federal level, which means I always orient towards national policy. So we're going to go to the next slide and take a look at websites that can help you find your federal elected officials in the United States. But there are websites that can help you find your state and local elected officials as well. And if you're not really sure what level of government a policy is decided by, you could call an elected official's office who represents you, and you can ask that question. So, for example, if I'm not sure who the representative is for my part of the state that I live in, I would go to www.house.gov. And when you enter that in your search browser, this page will come up. And as you can see on the right-hand side is a Find Your Representative bar. You enter your zip code. And when you do that, it will tell you who your member of Congress is. In a few cases, it's fairly rare, a zip code will be divided between two representatives. And they may ask you to put in your zip code plus the additional 4 numbers. But in general, most zip codes are intact. You put in your zip code, you hit look up, and it will tell you who your representative is. And more than that, it will give you the website, the email address, and the telephone number for your representative. On the next slide, you'll see that there is a similar way to find your United States senators. United States senators are organized by state. Every state has 2. And so if you go to www.senate.gov, on the left-hand side, you see the American flag and the Find Your Senators. And you can enter your state name, and it will tell you the names, the email addresses, the websites, all of that good stuff for your United States senators. And virtually every state legislator, city council, county board of supervisors, they have similar websites where you can put your zip code in and find out who it is that represents you. So we're going to take about 10, probably 12 minutes to spend some time in breakout groups. You know, it's really hard in this virtual environment to do anything that is interactive. And we would much rather be doing this in person, although it's great to be able to have so many people from all over the place participating in a virtual environment. On the next slide, we'll see the 3 questions that we would like you to take a few minutes brainstorming together around. So first, what is the issue that motivates you? What is the biggest concern for children and families in your community right now? And then we'd encourage you to do a little brainstorming together around what level of government, is it federal, is it state, is it local, holds the key to the solution. And it might be more than one. There might be multiple levels of government that you need to be talking to. But which level of government will you choose to do your work? And do you already know the elected officials that you need to talk to in order to be an effective advocate for children and families in your community? Or do you need to figure out who are the people that you should be reaching out? So we're going to ask you, it is 12:35, and we're going to ask you, we'll bring you back in about 10 or 12 minutes. So it's a short conversation, but hopefully an opportunity to hear about exciting things that are going on around the country with people you have not met. And then when we come back, we've got some additional detail nuts and bolts that we're going to go through, including talking about types of contact with elected officials and what happens if you end up talking to a staff person instead of the elected official themselves. One quick note before we head into the breakouts: if you are on the Spanish channel and you would like to be in a Spanish language breakout, when you get the message on your screen that invites you to go to a breakout, just stay where you are. And we will be putting folks who want a Spanish language breakout into Spanish breakout rooms. So enjoy meeting folks, and we will see you back here in about 10 minutes. We've got folks coming back to the main room, and our apologies to the Spanish language group that stayed on the main channel for interrupting what sounded like a really good conversation. I hope that you enjoyed your conversation with others. So we're moving into the home stretch now. And if we could go to the other slide, one of the things that can be discouraging about advocacy is trying to talk to the elected official and feeling like you ended up with the wrong person and here you are talking to staff. So let's talk for a minute or two about finding the right person in an office to communicate with and what kind of communications are options for you. So the first thing to remember is that no elected official has enough hours in the day or enough brain power to be able to cover all of the issues that they need to work on without help. So there may be some elected officials that are working on the issues that you care about, who don't have much help and support. Most school board members, for example, do not have staff, but the vast majority of staff, certainly your mayor, your governor, your federal elected officials, your state legislators, and even in most cases, person or a county supervisor, they have staff who can help you and who help the elected official to make decisions, to gather information, and to respond to constituent needs. So it is always exciting and frankly, just a little bit nervous making sometimes to be talking to have a meeting with the elected official. If you can't get a meeting with the elected official and you end up talking with staff, is that a problem? Well, my opinion is no. It is always great to connect directly with the elected official, but sometimes the elected officials, they're really busy. They're distracted. They might have 5 or 10 minutes with you, and then they have to go on to the next thing. And if you can find a staff person who can sit down with you virtually, over the phone, over Zoom, or in person, and really take the time to learn about the issue you care about and engage in a conversation about possible solutions, that might actually be a more productive meeting than a handshake, a photograph, and a busy elected official who's on to the next thing. That then begs the question, if it's an office like a senator's office or a mayor's office or a governor's office, where there are many staff, different staff may have different roles. And how do you figure out which staff you want to talk to? In most offices, where there's more than one elected official and one or maybe two staff people, there are typically two kinds of roles. One is considered to be casework. That's solving problems that impact an individual, like tracking down a Social Security check that didn't come, or helping somebody get a passport in time for a trip when the passport office is being slow. Casework is an issue that is particular to me and might not impact the entire community. Then there are assistants who make recommendations on policy. And in general, you will want to be talking to the policy staff, the people who are making recommendations on how much money should go into the housing budget for low-income housing, or the staff who are advising on local zoning rules. And so if you are not able to talk to the elected official and you need to be communicating with a staff person, it's worth asking questions about who is the most appropriate staff person to talk to. In the case of a United States Senator's office, for example, the staff who are in the district offices, the offices that are in state, are largely caseworker staff. And if you want to be talking about policy, it might be that the staff you need to be talking to and developing a relationship with are in Washington, D.C., and they're not local. On the other hand, if what you wanted to do was plan a visit so that that senator could come out and see a child care center and talk to parents who are on the waiting list for a child care voucher, then the staff at home in the district office might be the right ones to be working with. So when we say contact an elected official, what does that mean? Well, there are lots of different ways to do that. You can send a letter or an email that talks about the issue that you are concerned about, gives some information, and asks the elected official to do something. Almost all of the websites that you will find for elected officials have a button that you can click on in order to send an email. Frequently, those systems will ask for your zip code. And the reason that they do that is because they want to know if you are a constituent or not. Also, frequently, those systems will ask for your name and your address and your email address so that the elected officials can respond to you and send a reply back. And sometimes it makes people feel uncomfortable that their name and address is being requested, but it's only because the elected officials want to get back in touch with you and tell you what they've been doing on the issue, and also because they want to know if you are a constituent, a voter who lives in the area that they represent, or maybe lives someplace else. You can also make a phone call. There are sort of two different kinds of phone calls. One is very short. Call the front office. The phone is answered by a receptionist, and you leave a message. My name is Katrina McDonald. I am a constituent in Falls Church, and I would like Senator Warner to vote yes on adding more money for childcare. And you don't go into all of the arguments, pro and con. You just give your message and hang up. Obviously, you can have a meeting that is in person, by phone, or by Zoom, where you go into greater depth. Another question that sometimes people ask is, how many contacts does it take to make a difference? And you might be surprised by the answer to that. In every congressional office, there is somebody who sits by the phone and somebody else who processes the emails and the mail, and they keep track of, this week we received 1,000 phone calls on Social Security. We received 1,000 phone calls on Medicare or 1,000 phone calls on Ukraine. But on issues of impacting children and families, you tend to get many fewer, maybe 10, 20, and a small number of contacts can make a difference. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our next session, which I hope you'll be able to join. So thank you for joining us today. On the next slide, a reminder, we will be talking about telling your story for impact and how do you develop a story so that it makes that connection and motivation on October 25th, and connecting with others in your community to have strength in numbers on November 15th. Thank you for joining us. Have a good afternoon, and we look forward to talking more soon.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Very
Thanks.
informative.
Enjoy the rest
Thank
of your
you.
afternoon.
You too.